Welcome back. So let's kind of go through the vignettes of this article. We'll start on page 446. They talk about a great day climbing and setting the scene. So Jeff, his friend, which is anonymized a little bit, winds up going climbing. He gives a little bit of a description, right? He rents an apartment with his girlfriend. They're 25, white middle-class Canadians from one of the main West Coast cities. And so what do they wind up doing? They do a lot of really tough climbs, and they're trying to film these climbs and write scenarios and stories to go with the climbs to kind of inspire people, right? And there's a lot of photography. Jeff and Valeria have to get really good, not just with writing a story, but also learning how to use photographic equipment, fancy cameras and all that other kind of stuff. So he spends a lot of time professional networking. And they start talking about these intertwining of activities. So much of what he's doing is networking with other people who might be able to help him, right? And what winds up being one of the results of these people in the rock climbing community, whether they're photographers, climbers, etc., they wind up getting him a speaking event that gives him a $1,000 paycheck, which is not too bad. And he says, well, it won't be a lot, right? But at least we get a couple of flight tickets, and it'll cover the room and board. And while they're there, they're going to try to do an interview with a lady from a Spanish magazine and also hopefully get paid for that. They also met some sponsors while they were there, and they sold some of the pictures of their rock climbings for 700 euros. So they're not really getting paid so much to climb rocks, but they're getting paid for these other products, the speaking engagements, the photos they take. Now here's the problem. It talks about he didn't have health insurance or other benefits. That's one of the dangers of this kind of lifestyle. And a lot of these sponsors also give him the gear that he needs, like climbing gear, so that he can do that. And of course, when he wears that climbing gear or uses that climbing gear and gets a picture of it, of course, that's something that the sponsor will be willing to pay him for. He gets, in fact, it talks about Valerie is paid approximately $200 for 15 pictures and around $300 for video clips. So this is how they're actually making their money. Now, as we start going a little bit further into the article, they talk about a lot of the difficulty that they have, right? They get a couple of lectures and some extra pay for that. And, after they climb and they're all tired, then what do they do at night? They sleep, right? No. They're staying up, writing things for the blog, writing stuff for the Facebook post. They're trying to create aspirational content so people look up and like, wow, I want to be just like them. I want to make that kind of money too. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get people attracted to their social media. And of course, when more people see the social media, then, of course, that leads to other opportunities, right? I kind of laugh, even though my YouTube channel right now, at least, is not particularly popular. I have had people reach out to me, people interested in me being a supervisor for them on their PhD theses, and I've met some co-authors through this YouTube channel and some other different kinds of opportunities, even though I'm not really getting paid for it yet. So that's another example that maybe some of you can relate to. So they also talk about their sponsors require certain numbers of posts. So their sponsors require that they do a certain number of posts on Facebook, Instagram, and all that kind of stuff. And so if they don't make those posts, they don't get paid. So are they really being paid to rock climb, or are they paid to write about rock climbing? This is where this multi-layered labor comes into play. And of course, along the process, he learns all sorts of business skills. He learns contract writing, negotiation, marketing, and all that kind of stuff. So he starts out as a climber, but then he actually becomes a businessman too, an independent, kind of multi-layered entrepreneur. And so I want to give you one last thought from this paper. And he says something. He talks about what is a professional climber. He says you're not a professional because, and this is on page 454, but he says, just climbing isn't enough to make you a professional. You've got to do more stuff. You've got to write the blog entries. You've got to get the sponsors. You've got to produce photos, produce videos. You have to do events for sponsors and stuff like that. Being a professional in the most standard way of the term and stuff like that. They say, a lot of climbers say they should get paid $15,000 a year because they make really hard climbs. But nobody cares if you just climb for yourself. You have to be willing to do stuff for other people. One final example I'll share with you that I that I reflect upon, I think about a lot of bodybuilders, right? When I was in high school, I worked out at a gym that actually paid bodybuilders to work out there. Like, they didn't have to talk to you, they didn't have to train you, they just had to be in the gym at the same time, doing their workouts at the same time you were there. A lot of professional football players would be there and stuff too. And, you know, I was young, I was 16 or 17, and there was one of them. I probably am reticent to say his name because unfortunately he passed away, gosh, about 2 decades ago. Yeah, he passed away a couple of years after I went to college, so almost 2 decades ago. But he was a really nice guy. You know, I'm a teenager, and I'm like looking up to this guy, like idolizing this bodybuilder. Wow, you know, like I knew who he was because I had recognized him. I used to buy copies of this magazine called Flex. Those of you that are interested in bodybuilding have probably heard of it. And so I recognized him immediately. And so I think if I'd been like, you know, my 20s or 30s, maybe he would have been a little more, I don't know if he would have been as friendly, but, you know, a young person, I have the baby face, so I might have been 15 or 16, but I probably look like I was about 12. And so I was like talking to him, and I told him how much I liked what he was doing, and he was actually really nice. So, you know, somehow it came up, and he was talking about, you know, he'd competed in Mr. Olympia, but he didn't really get paid for being Mr. Olympia. It was all the other stuff. That's where he got his money. So he got paid, you know, for working out a couple days at this gym. And then, of course, he did the endorsements on products. Flex Magazine would interview him for things. And, of course, you have to remember, a couple decades ago, this is long before social media is a thing, but there's still that multi-layered labor. He said sometimes he did personal training for people, too. But it was mostly, you know, he wasn't paid to just go to the gym and lift weights. In fact, he wasn't even really paid for placing in Mr. Olympia. It was all the sponsors, the product placements, all that other stuff that goes with it. He'd do speaking engagements and stuff too. And that's how he made his money. And it's the same principle that we see in this article. Well, this is one of my favorite articles. I hope you enjoy it. As always, give me a thumbs up. That's a like. Subscribe. Make sure you comment down below so Dr. D can become a multi-layered laborer as well. I'll see you in the next playlist.